Hi everyone, Ellen with a Y here. So in our second talk about grief, I wanted to talk about some of the emotions that come up, in addition to the traditional ones that we might think about when we lose someone. When somebody that we love dies, I think that we expect to feel sad and lonely and all the emotions that we typically associate with grief. But there are a lot of other emotions that tend to come up too: fear, anger, guilt, shame, jealousy, uncertainty. There's a whole treasure trove of wonderful little emotions that might pop up when we least expect it. And some of them are very surprising. I couldn't figure out, in my case, why I felt this tremendous shame and tremendous grief. So, to illustrate this, I am going to give you my little confession and tell you a bit about my story. So the person that I'm grieving is my son, Jake. He was diagnosed with leukemia shortly after his 17th birthday. It was an extremely aggressive disease with three genetic anomalies, and the prognosis was terrible. We were giving a 10 to 15% chance of survival. So we were pretty much living in the hospital. Jake was terrified, and he was terribly sick all the time. And I was living in the hospital with him, trying to keep it together, sleeping in the hospital chair, so I was exhausted. And I was so afraid. It felt to me like a freight train was coming at me, and there was nothing I could do to get out of its way. And I could just see it come in and come in and come in, and I was in the path, and nothing was going to stop it. So when Jake died, almost 5 months to the day after his diagnosis, the first feeling that I felt was a tremendous sense of peace and relief, which was immediately followed by overwhelming shame and guilt, because what kind of mother is going to be relieved that her child died? I mean, I couldn't reconcile this in my head. It was awful. And as the months went by, these feelings of shame and guilt grew and grew. Now, at the time, I wasn't really cognizant of where these feelings were coming from because I was overwhelmed with the loss of my child and everything that goes along with that. So, as these feelings grew, I decided that I was going to really sit down and analyze them and shine some light on where these feelings were coming from in hopes that I could do away with them and move through them. And that's what I did. I sat down and I figured out where these feelings were coming from. I thought about what had happened when Jake died, and I thought about my feelings, and in understanding them and in bringing them to the forefront, I am able to put my head above my heart and explain to myself, of course you felt relief. Not because your child died, but because he's no longer in pain, and because he was no longer afraid, and because you are no longer afraid. I was holding my breath for 5 months, and I could finally let it out because the worst had happened. And for me, just realizing this was tremendously helpful and has helped me in my journey to move along. I also talked about jealousy. In my case, um, we never got to high school graduation. We never got to college graduation. I'll never see my child get married. I'll never have grandchildren. Obviously, other friends of mine are at those stages in their life where all these things are happening for them. And while I am very happy for them, I- it wouldn't be normal if I didn't have some, little feeling in the back of my head, a little bit of jealousy there. But in understanding that and in knowing where it's coming from, Again, head over heart, I can accept it and I can move through it and I can move forward from there. I also talk to people all the time, somebody who's lost a spouse who might feel tremendous jealousy seeing other people happy with their spouses. Again, it doesn't make you a horrible person, it makes you normal. These are human emotions. And like I said, when we shed a little bit of daylight on them, it can be very, very helpful. The last emotion that I want to talk about is happiness. Do we get that? Is that a possibility for us when we're so tormented by the loss of our loved ones? I would say yes. I was on a walk the other day and I caught myself, being happy. I'm walking along and it's a beautiful day and the sun's shining and the birds are out and the spring flowers are blooming. I'm listening to great music and I thought, wow, I'm so happy. And then immediately, again, you feel guilt. Well, how can I be happy when my child is gone? Because you can. Because you can. Head over heart. It is ridiculous to think that I can never, ever be happy again for a minute in my life. As a matter of fact, I want as many happy minutes as I possibly can have. And I wish that for you too, because it doesn't serve anyone not to have those joyful moments. So I am really interested in your journey and knowing what kind of emotions you might be feeling and how you've worked through them, or if you haven't worked through them, and if this is helpful for you at all. I'd also appreciate it if you do find this helpful, if you hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel or hit the like button. Feel free to share it with other people, anybody that you know who might find it helpful. And as I said, I hope that this can open up a conversation so that we can all continue in our healing process. Have a great day.